Hi, welcome back to another episode of Microservices TV. We will have definitely a fun episode this week with Erin joining us again to talk about some of the kind of the great work that she's been doing and her and her team for the Game On application that we talked about last year around this time. So why don't you give yourself a quick intro again, and then we'll jump into a lot of the microservices, learning, building, fun stuff that you've been focused on.
So I'm Erin still, and I still work on roughly the same thing. I don't know. I feel like my life has changed since last year. We've done a lot of really cool things with the game. It's actually going to be at DevOps US this year. We have lots of new stuff on the website coming out.
And you've taken it to many other previous conferences.
We've taken it to
Java
Java 1. We've taken it to QCon. We've had a couple places. We actually had a really cool event at QCon related to the game. So if you guys don't remember what the game is, it's a text-based adventure game that we built to help people learn about microservices and to help people go through some thinking exercises to start to
conceptualize, visualize,
I like to
feel.
say what we're trying to do is get you to smack into the wall, to do the screw up. Oh, wait, that's why this matters. To have those moments faster.
Build it, see it, do it, as opposed to just the conceptualization.
Exactly. What we did at QCon was really cool. This is not a building of things, but it is a cool thing that we did. We had a big room full of people with sticky notes, and we had them go through the activity of designing a room. Now remember, rooms in the game, right? This is text-based adventure game, so it's the typical if this then that thing, right? Somebody's going to go in the game, they're going to type in a command, you might have some stuff in your room to interact with, you're going to look at the shoes or look in the cabinet or something like that, and when they type that, then something should happen. So we had them all at different tables in this room having a social event. We had them okay, so you're going to make a room. Let's, as a table, figure out what you want your theme to be, what kinds of things. So I think there was one group that started an idea about having their room, this would end up being just a service, as a wine cellar. So they had wine in there, they were talking about temperature, they were doing some other things. And then I could walk them through the process of saying, okay, so now your room is built and you have it standing up as a service and everybody loves your room because you did really cool things, like you have the tavern in your typical your typical dungeon game, and everybody is in there all the time. So now you're going to scale and do more instances of that. Okay, so does your room have anything in it that there's only one of? Because now you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out now how to do caching so that you can know who has that one item across all the instances of your room. And so actually there's some new walkthroughs that we have that are we call them advanced adventures. So we have some new walkthroughs to help people explore, for example, JSR 107 with Redis. JSR 107 is JCache. It's a standard for caching for Java. And we have some really interesting things that we learned and tried to get JSR 107 caching working with Redison for Redis. So that's very cool and just out in time for DevOps. So that was a lot.
It's a busy year. So, I mean, have you guys documented a lot of this? I mean, I know last year was beginning around this time to start to put a lot of this into the Chronicles as we started working together on some of it post-Interconnect last year. And then that's really, for me and a lot of the clients I talk to, a lot of the internal folk and just the architects that we work with, that's one of the best resources I have as far as, microservices in the wild type thing, as far as you guys do a great job of documenting that. And
all the things that we screwed up.
All the things, either, whether you're of the fail fast variety or the experiment and learn fast variety, however you describe it, you guys document it well.
What was fun, we went to OSCON. And one of my team members, Kate, and I talked at OSCON. And one of the things that I've found interesting is as people are learning about microservices, the question that you always get is, well, how do I make my service? How do I know how big it should be? How do I don't
What's
understand.
Micro?
Right? And so then I can tell the story. Like when we started with the game, we thought we had three things, right? We had the player, and we had the concierge, and we had a room, because you have to have a room or you don't build anything for any purpose. So we had to have one of those. But it was like, as we built this thing, it's like, oh wait, this player is doing too much. Like there's this one part grew into the mediator. And that's the thing where if I have my browser, it talks to the mediator, and the mediator mediates and talks to the room. But it was like, that was one piece that pulled out of the player. And so then the player just became kind of CRUD stuff. And then, and even before that, we had another Kate who did our web front end. And she's only JavaScript. She didn't want to have anything to do with Java. So that pulled out. So it's like we started with 3 services, and we ended up very quickly with like 5.
Okay.
Because it was
Which
like
was still kind of a net new 5 as opposed to just
it was a net new 5,
plus
but
2.
it was like, it was a very organic growth. You know, it was like we started out with the player was going to do everything with player stuff, and it was very organic. Like, oh, we get this now. So now we can start to split them out. And I like to tell people when I'm talking to them, like, don't start really small because it's hard to put them back together. Start coarser, and then nature will take its course, and you will start to figure out.
Very much the monolith first approach, as far as just build it first, prove it out, and then figure out where those kind of coarse fault lines are, start to separate it, kind of pull it apart, and then bunch it up into those services, as opposed to going massively wide from the get-go and getting too small and realizing that you're putting in way too much overhead and pain points, and just kind of building yourself into a hole, as opposed to proving it out, getting it functional, and then kind of erasing some of those pain points.
It will start to feel natural, and you start to understand with microservices how part of what you're trying to do is allow things to evolve differently at different rates and pace, and you start to realize, like within player even, it was like we had this as an isolated thing, but you started to realize like what I was doing with the mediator was totally separate. It was totally separate, even internal organization-wise. It was like I knew they were going to sprawn into many things. I did it on purpose, by accident. But it was like it was when Kate really wanted to be evolving the web front end, and she wanted to do it at a different pace than I had to do with this mediator function, which was a threading, complicated, nasty piece of code that had nothing to do with the CRUD thing that was stable. It was like, why did I put these together to begin with anyway?
Exactly.
But when I started, I didn't know that.
So, I mean, that jumps into a lot of the conversation we have with, and I'm sure we're going to have this week coming up, where how do I know what I'm doing? How do I know how to convert some of this stuff? How do I build some of this stuff out? And it gets into, one of the tomes that is referred to, here with Eric Evans' book of domain-driven design and a lot of that stuff. And so, I mean, so whether you're explicitly applying that or just, just like going through some of the principles, I mean.
But that's the thing about Eric's book. Like, if you go and read domain-driven design, he tells you, you will get it wrong. The terms that you use, you will get it wrong. You will learn as you go. You have to be able to revisit it. So, case in point, I told you about, we did exactly this last year when I was like, look, I did the map and it was cool and I did all the stuff. So that even came from a mistake, so to speak. So I told you just a second ago, we had the player and we had the concierge and we had a room. And my team is split, some in the at least Eastern time zone, and then some in the UK. And so we purposely did that so we could kind of pair up, right? Still do work together even though we're time zone separated. So I was off wrestling trolls with the mediator, and I don't remember what Ozzy was doing. I think he was doing auth stuff. And so then we had the UK guys who were trying to get the concierge in the room kind of working together. And then I picked my head up, and it was like when we were adding the JavaScript room. I was like, wait, when we add this room, why does the room have to know who his neighbor was? So for me, when I was explaining what I thought this app needed to do and had named it the concierge, it was a stupid name. I had envisioned for me, the concierge was like a helper. I'm going to help you move from here to here. And in my mind, that meant the concierge knew where you were supposed to go. In their mind, that's not what the concierge did. The concierge just said yes or no. And so, we were completely broken because of a wrong word choice. It was a wrong noun.
Using words that you thought meant the same thing, but not using the same language underneath.
Exactly. Well, I used a word that wasn't universally understood. So if you look at domain-driven design, they talk about a universal language where everybody is using the word to mean the same thing, preferably with a really intuitive, natural meaning, so you don't have to keep throwing dictionaries at each other.
Keep redefining, or what are you talking about? Or
we
going
named
back
that
to
service
something.
the map, and all the confusion went away, right? Like, duh, why did we call it that to begin with? Because we didn't, but we learn, and you fix your model, and you go from there.
And I think one of the big points that you just mentioned there, and kind of that story in a nutshell, is start small and grow, but don't worry about strictly linear growth. I mean, you can go up, come down, shrink, expand, and kind of keep figuring out what your services are meant to do, once you get comfortable, once you had that separation between the front end and the back end pieces, you know, you have everything separated out so the front end can evolve on its own now, and then the back end can evolve separately.
Yes.
And so don't worry about just because you created a service now that it has to be a part of that and kind of long-lived, and whatever you build is always there. Like, it's going to be flexible, it's going to go up, it's going to come down, and, you know, as long as you're able to evolve the application as a whole and solve your business needs and things like that, it's comfortable.
When we replaced the concierge with the map, we stood the map up next to it, and then we were able to say, okay, here's all the people that are using the concierge that are out, and we'll gradually flip them all over, and then it was fine.
Awesome.
So we did do that separation in place.
What are some things you hope to accomplish this year with
I'm totally
the game?
excited. We have actually people that are looking at DevOps. We'll see how far they get. They're looking to take the map service. Remember, I was all excited. I was totally all excited because I got it working and I learned all this crazy stuff with CouchDB. Yeah, they're telling me I did it totally wrong, which is fine. And they're going to try to do it with a graph database.
Again, learning.
Which is exactly right. I mean, when you look at the mountains of things to learn, I told you last year I was totally excited because I knew nothing about NoSQL databases, and I got it to do something really cool, and it meet our needs and all that stuff. I wasn't ready to try graph databases, right? But if you look at the problem space, a graph database does make a lot of sense. So I'm really excited to have people try
like a fit for purpose to that specific microservice need for that task. But at the same time, it's separated enough so it didn't matter what back-end data source you chose. It just happened to be ended up fighting more trolls than you needed to if you ended up going with a graph database, but you weren't ready to approach that.
That was one mountain too many.
So yeah, exactly.
That was one mountain too many. I didn't want to do that one at the time.
But by following those microservices principles of independence and autonomy and all that stuff, now it's like
we can replace the inside.
You've got some
cares.
GraphDB ninjas that want to come in and just replace it and not have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem with it. Hopefully they don't leave me behind. I'm hoping they can replace all my code and not leave me behind, that I learn what they're doing too.
I don't think that'll be a problem. The other thing I did recently just see is you guys have some stuff going for Swift.
We do.
So
we do. We have a bunch of sample rooms. So we do still have a sample room for Node, and one for Go, and one for Java, and we now have one for Swift.
Awesome. I mean, where the game's come in the last year, I mean, it's a night and day difference, and you guys have put in an insane amount of time. And for anybody interested in microservices development as a whole, and just kind of, again, the evolutionary aspect of it, the chronicles that you guys have together on the website is a good look at going through the muck and figuring it out, and experimenting and letting it fail and growing and learning. And so we just published a white paper, and I included that link for you guys to be in there.
That's good.
To kind of show the monolith first approach. Here's how you do it. Here's how you run with it. And then
we actually have a couple more chronicles we should write, because, for example, we brought Kafka in, which we have a chronicle for bringing in Kafka as an event engine. But there's like a lesson we learned there in that I think we have the order wrong. So we have the player service being like, the source of all knowledge about where the player ended up. But I think we optimized the wrong way.
Okay.
So right now, like the mediator is where I'm in my browser and I'm integrating, I'm issuing commands, and that goes to the mediator. And the way it works right now, which is broken, is that the mediator sends to the player makes the change to the database, and that comes back to the mediator. No, I shouldn't do it that way, right? Because what we have it, I go to the player issues an event, and that way if I'm logged in with multiple devices, because of course we do that, because we're dorks. So when that happens, right, I want my other session to come along, right? I need the other session to move too. But I think
that's like the magic of Google Docs of doing everything in multiple browsers and seeing it all happen together.
Having the event issued from the player is optimizing for the wrong thing. And we've started to figure that out. I need to optimize for the player. Me actually interacting.
Doing something.
So it's like I need the mediator to be the one emitting the events. And even though the player service can still be the source of knowledge, it should be reacting to the events to persist, so that the focus is the mediator.
Which again now gets into the whole different kind of positioning of REST-driven APIs, messaging APIs, CQRS, event sourcing,
but
all of that stuff.
But also it's one of those things where you learn. We optimized wrong. Like we thought, we knew we wanted an event to propagate through the system, but we didn't think about how to make that event
who's generating, who's listening.
Exactly, and it's who you're optimizing for. So we could do it either way, and we did it that way, and we're like, oh, no, actually that's wrong. We have to go back and fix it. But that, it's like we got it to work. It does good things.
It works. It's usable. People are out there doing it, playing with it, but you're able to evolve it. You're able to fix it all at the same time. So, I mean, that's you can't get much better than that as far as flexibility, resiliency, agility, all of that stuff, while still saying, no, it's all over the floor at the same time. But people are still out there. They're still playing. They're still running through rooms, still going to the pub, still picking up the...
That's right. The shoes.
Yeah.
You have to get the shoes.
But thanks again for joining us. And then we'll make sure like all the links and everything are down here on the bottom third for when we actually produce this stuff and get it posted up on the site. But for Erin, signing off this week for Microservices TV, Rick Osowski. See you again.